Hello and welcome to Badger Talks Live, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I am Nia Blassingame, originally from Madison, Wisconsin. I am a second year law student in the School of Law studying for my Juris Doctorate. I am pleased to introduce Mitch, clinical law professor and director of the Economic Justice Institute, which houses the Neighborhood Law Clinic. Today, he will be sharing how the clinic has been serving Dane County residents for the past 25 years, while at the same time providing valuable experience and education for UW-Madison law students. Mitch has been a wonderful professor and mentor to me during this past school year. Mitch has long been determined to increase access to justice. He co-founded Community Justice, Inc., a nonprofit tax-exempt sliding scale law firm that provides direct legal services to low-income individuals. His practice has focused primarily in the areas of housing law, employment law, government benefits, and guardian ad litem work. Please welcome Professor Mitch.
Thank you, Nia. I'm really happy to be here today, and especially happy that Nia was able to give this introduction. The slide that you see about the Neighborhood Law Clinic and Nia is really what the Neighborhood Law Clinic is about. It's about the community that we serve and the students who provide that service and do the learning. So I'm really excited to tell you a little bit more about those two things primarily, along with the rest of the when, where, what, why, and how of the Neighborhood Law Clinic. So let's start with the most important part, and that's the people of the Neighborhood Law Clinic. Nia just introduced me, she as a second year law student. And the slide that's up is the community. This is actually our office on the south side of town in the Villager Mall. This is a grand opening ceremony here with a whole lot of speakers, as you can see, a packed room pre-COVID-19. The community office for the Neighborhood Law Clinic is currently located at 2238 South Park Street. It is part of the University of Wisconsin South Madison Partnership Space. The UW has this commitment to partnering with the South Madison community, and the Neighborhood Law Clinic is a proud part of that partnership. So those are the community members that we serve, as you can see in the slide here. And the people that do this service aren't just Nia, but a whole host of students. So here I have a couple of posts. We have a pre-law program separate from the Neighborhood Law Clinic that brings in students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds to get them ready to participate in law school. And then we have on the right-hand side some of our clinical law students. So in the Economic Justice Institute, which is where the Neighborhood Law Clinic is located within the law school, we have a total of 40 students every year. And so they provide over 40,000 hours of legal work to the community, which is a pretty impressive number when you think about it. So these are the students and the students to be who will be out in the community providing service. And I want to talk about where that is, because location is very important. This is the UW Law School. It's a beautiful photo. Unfortunately, what you don't see in this picture is a lot of houses. Campus is a wonderful place to work. The law school is on the bottom left of this beautiful photo on Bascom Hill. But there aren't access opportunities for people to come into campus is a little constrained. The closest public parking of any size is a couple of blocks away from the law school, and a couple of blocks in Wisconsin winters can be pretty rough, and navigating campus, if you're not familiar with it, is very, very confusing. So while I'm speaking to you today from this building here on Bascom Hill, the Neighborhood Law Clinic, we've been in the community. We've been in the community for 25 years. This is a photo. It's probably a little bit too small, but what this is circled at the bottom of the screen is the Neighborhood Law Clinic. This is, again, South Park Street. We're in what's called the Village on Park, or the Villager Mall. We're close to the South Madison bus transfer point. We're close to the South campus of the Madison College. We're close to the Lincoln Elementary School. A number of churches and community centers such as Centro Hispano are right around. And also in all of these little fuzzy tree-lined streets are homes. We're right there in the neighborhood, and we've been there for about 25 years now, serving folks and helping them meet their goals. So the Neighborhood Law Clinic, as I mentioned, is part of the Economic Justice Institute. Our mission at the Economic Justice Institute is to provide students with a significant learning experience in which they develop into skilled legal professionals and engaged public citizens. So we do that by having students provide hands-on legal training for folks. The photo on the slide that's up here is an actual photo. We got permission from both the court and our clients and the opposing party. This is a real trial. This isn't staged. In the photo, you see myself, a couple of Neighborhood Law Clinic students. Commissioner Riccardi is presiding over this hearing. In the back, in the bright blue shirt, is our client. Sitting next to him is an interpreter. This is a real case, like so many of our cases, of an employment law situation where our client, a Latino gentleman, wasn't paid for the work that he did. This case was about roofing work and siding work. And so after negotiations had failed, the negotiations were undertaken by the students, both over the phone, in writing, formal documents. Eventually, they had to draft formal legal proceedings. They filed those. They prepared for court. They met with our client here. And this is us in court with our client examining him off the photo that you don't see as the opposing party who had been refusing to pay our client in this case. So that's the type of work that we do. That's one little snippet. I'll get back to a little bit more examples in a few more here. The Neighborhood Law Clinic is part of the Economic Justice Institute, where I direct primarily the Neighborhood Law Clinic, but I'm also happily in charge nominally of the Consumer Law Clinic, the Family Court Clinic, the Immigrant Justice Clinic, and our VOCA Restraining Order Clinic. All of these clinics are responsive to the community need. Again, 25 years ago, we started the Neighborhood Law Clinic in order to provide services for folks in the community. And people kept coming in saying, you know, we have needs for family law services. And so more than a decade ago now, about 14 years or 15 years ago now, we started a family court clinic to provide family court services in the community. A few years after that, we started the Immigrant Justice Clinic, which provides desperately needed services to so many members of our community and their families, and quite honestly, the folks that they work for, to strengthen the community and provide those needed immigration services. Just 3 years ago, we added the VOCA, that's the Victim of Crime Act Restraining Order Clinic, to provide restraining order services for folks who have been victims of domestic violence. And the Consumer Law Clinic actually predates the Neighborhood Law Clinic, going way back to the 70s, has provided all sorts of needed services for folks in the consumer law arena, things like foreclosures and auto repossessions, debt collections, those types of matters. Again, that's the Economic Justice Institute. Today, we're focusing in on the Neighborhood Law Clinic, which is the particular clinic that I am directly in charge of and work with students there. Since we've spun off all of these other programs and have clinics that focus in on the other areas there, the Neighborhood Law Clinic focuses mostly on rental housing and employment law. Those are two areas that come up again and again for folks throughout our community. In addition to doing the traditional legal work, Students also will engage with the community in drafting educational materials and participating in efforts that we try to follow the community and let the community members and leaders designate what areas are important. Just as we go into the community and have been in the community for 25 years, we don't go in saying, this is what you need help with. We go in and say, here's what we can offer. And we change that based on the needs of the community. So rental housing and employment are the areas that we practice because those are the areas that people have asked for assistance with. Truth be told, people want even more assistance. We're not able to provide it in all areas. So the Neighborhood Law Clinic, or the NLC, can help you with any number of things, again, with respect to rental housing and employment. A lot of those things are matters like illegal evictions, security deposits that have not been returned, uninhabitable homes, employers that don't pay you your wages, short you on your wages, don't pay you for the work that you've done, discrimination in housing and employment. Unfortunately, we don't do areas listed here on the right-hand side. Those are very important, and we try to get folks to either resources in the community that provide these services, or we've created extra clinics here at the law school to provide these necessary services for folks in the community. And we're always listening. If people have needs that aren't being met again and again, and they come to us, then we can potentially try to add on additional areas that we cover, or push for the creation of new resources. One of my favorite examples in this area is that we used to not have, you'll see at the last bullet on the left-hand side here, is discrimination. And when I started in the program, we didn't do discrimination. We would do rental housing and we would do unpaid wage cases, but never any housing discrimination, never any employment discrimination. And people kept coming to us, and we couldn't find a good referral for a lot of our clientele that needed help with discrimination cases. So we started to do those cases. So now we are a resource, again, based on listening to the needs of the community. Those needs, again, how we provide them is up next. So the delivery of legal services. Legal services, as everyone knows, are available to those who have ample resources. If you have the wherewithal to take off work, to hire a babysitter, to go into a law office, or to make quiet time where you can Zoom into a law office, if you have the technological resources to have a potentially embarrassing but certainly confidential conversation with a lawyer, that's much more accessible if you have the funds to pay them and the funds just to be able to make the time and the place to be able to meet with a lawyer. For everyone else, limited legal services, and it's really limited legal services, come from what I call the big three. Those are government-funded programs in Wisconsin. The big one is Legal Action of Wisconsin. They are a fantastic organization. We have a lot of law students who have gone on to work with Legal Action of Wisconsin. You have private donation and grant-funded organizations like Catholic Charities that does a lot of great immigration work, and other wonderful organizations. But those are dependent upon grant funding, which ebbs and flows. And finally, pro bono work. Oftentimes we hear this phrase, pro bono work, and you hope that you can maybe find an attorney, but if you've ever been someone who's had to look for legal services and you can't afford to pay for them, you know that is like trying to find a needle in a haystack, is to try to find somebody who might be able and might be willing to take your case on pro bono. There's a lot of attorneys that do a lot of wonderful pro bono work, but the math on it is simply that all attorneys, all of them, would have to do a full-time job, full-time, 40 hours a week, and we would just barely meet the legal needs of folks in the community. That's backed up by study after study. So pro bono work alone is not going to get it done. We need more programs that are funded. We need more donations and grant funded organizations. And I want to talk a little bit more about these limitations because this is a common misconception about accessing legal services. So these traditional legal service providers have these limitations. So you can see here, government-funded organizations like Legal Action of Wisconsin and also the public defender, they have limitations on their practice. You know, you can get a public defender if you make incredibly low wage, a poverty level wage, and it's only for criminal work. You cannot get a public defender to say or represent you in buying a home or with an eviction. Legal Services Corporation, things like Legal Action of Wisconsin, they have limitations. Again, this is funding that comes from Congress. As you may have heard, we have a tiny bit of polarization in the country, a lot of fighting, quite honestly, at the federal level about what should be funded and what shouldn't be funded. And it changes with every administration. So imagine if you work at a place, at an office, and every couple of years, your funding goes up or your funding goes down. What you can work on and what you can't work on changes. That's real life for legal service corporation attorneys. The money comes in and the money then suddenly dries up with a different grant, with a different administration. Where they can practice and where they can't practice is limited with new administrations, with new budget bills. Also, again, just like with public defenders, you have to make an incredibly low wage, generally 125% of the federal poverty guideline or below. That's an incredibly low amount in order to qualify. So we have also, then again, pro bono funds. I talked about how difficult it is for pro bono to actually meet the unmet need. And also there's no organized, there are really great efforts by the state bar, local bar associations to connect people with pro bono resources. But there isn't enough, you know, even with these folks working as connectors. So there's just simply not enough, and there can't be enough. That's not a fault on people for not volunteering. There just simply isn't enough. Privately funded organizations is sort of a hybrid between the two. They might be able to serve folks who make a livable wage, but that actually depends on their grants and their donations. And where they can work depends on their grants and donations. I feel like organizations that are in the news a lot would be the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, other grant-funded and donor-funded organizations on the conservative side of things also exist, but they don't practice in every area. Again, you can't go to ACLU if you're you know, one individual and you're being evicted. Typically, they're not going to take one individual's case. It's the same thing on so many areas there. So you have lots and lots of limitations through these traditional, worthy but traditional delivery methods. So what you have is this well-documented justice gap, right? Millions of folks fall into this justice gap. Millions of folks go without representation. And a lost case, that can mean the loss of a home, the loss of wages, other benefits, in addition to a monetary judgment that can haunt families and wreck their credit and drive them into a cycle of poverty that can be hard to escape from. And this is where you get a couple of bad things, you know, that don't go your way, bad decisions, limited access that end up stacking up against the family, so that they're not able to access their basic rights, and that perpetuates. So we have generational issues with the justice gap. So that's why services like the Neighborhood Law Clinic and the other clinics here at the University of Wisconsin are necessary. They help to plug a little bit of this justice gap or bridge the justice gap. We don't and can't serve everyone, but every little bit certainly helps. And we want to try to do that again in a really thoughtful, community-led, community-driven sort of way. So let's talk about how we do that, right? So, excuse me a second. The approach that we take involves agency for all. What I mean by this is students they're clinical law students. One of the best ways to think about clinical law students, right? So these are folks who have gone through, have been exceptional students in high school. They've been exceptional students throughout their entire undergraduate college degrees. Some of them typically have gone on into the professional world. They've worked at a business, they've started businesses. And then after that, the typical path is you get a college degree, you go into the work field for a few years, then you come back to law school. So these are full-fledged adults, not college kids anymore, and they've excelled, and they're given a lot of autonomy, a lot of ability to direct how they're going to approach and handle a case. And the example that I like to, or analogy that I like to make, is if you consider going to the hospital. Maybe you've been lucky to not have to go to the hospital, but if you've seen one of those doctor shows, you know that you have interns and residents and attending physicians, right? And somehow in there's a hierarchy, but they're all doctors, right? They've all done so much schooling. They're all incredibly bright. They're all able to help people with their health. Clinical law students are the same way. These are adults who are able to practice law in Wisconsin under supervision. So that's under the Wisconsin Supreme Court rule, allows clinical law students to practice. And in that practice, we at the University of Wisconsin provide that supervision for these law students, provide some training so that they know the substantive area, the procedural area. But then we give them a lot of control over how they take and where they take their education. So they're going to grow based on the experiences and their interactions with the community. And experience, obviously, is the best teacher. So it's not just autonomy, though, for the students. There's autonomy and agency for the community as well. And what does that mean? That means that we try not to parachute in and tell the community, hey, we're here to serve you for this semester, and then in a couple of months we'll be gone. This was a neat project. No, we have been in the community again for 25 years. We are there unless we are on semester break. So we try to empower individuals by letting them dictate the course of their case, by letting them dictate what it is that they need legal help with. We aren't going door to door trying to sell services. We don't charge for our services. We have an office, and folks come into that office. During our COVID restrictions here, people can call. The number to call is 608-264. 608-265-2441. The only times that we're not able to help people is when we're on semester break. And full disclosure, we're currently on semester break. We will be back meeting with folks in June. So you can call. In fact, you can make an appointment right now for a meeting in June. We are here 12 months out of the year, again, except for semester breaks when students are in finals or off for a handful of weeks. But then the community members come in and they explain to us what it is that they'd like to see. A key question for all of the students when meeting with community members is that they ask community members, what are your goals? What would you like to hire our law firm? Again, we do not charge, but I say hire a law firm because it's very important that the community, even if they don't have the access to funds or resources, that they be treated the same way as somebody who does have those resources. So we offer services to folks and we say, well, what would you like to hire us to do? We don't charge, so we're free. You don't have to hire us. Sometimes pursuing a legal justice system avenue isn't the best choice for so many clients. Sometimes the system isn't set up to provide them with justice. Sometimes it isn't set up correctly yet. And so we try to advocate both on individual level and on a broader community impact. I'll give you an example of that in just a little bit. So we want to, return this control to folks who often don't have that same level of control based on their lack of resources. Again, that's why we are housed here at the Neighborhood Law Clinic within what's called the Economic Justice Institute, as we're trying to tilt that back to more of a balanced set of scales, as opposed to having economic disadvantages count against you with your basic foundational legal rights to things like housing and employment. And so we often do that by providing a check on powerful individuals with ample resources, things like property owners and employers, who often can take advantage of the clients and folks in our community. So we balance that out, and we always start by doing negotiations with any individual, before we would go to any type of actual lawsuit. But we do look for cases where the individual has tried to get relief on their own. So again, if you think of this, the Neighborhood Law Clinic is like a teaching law office in the community, just like a teaching hospital provides needed medical services. We provide needed legal services in the community. And just like with a hospital, you wouldn't go in to see your hospital, your doctor at the hospital, unless you had already tried a few things first, right? You would, take some medicine, you would try to take care of yourself, you do these things. And that's where we typically see folks, is that they've tried, they've asked, they've looked things up. They've tried maybe going to a trusted advisor, a clergy person, someone else in their community, and it hasn't worked. Social workers are a major source of referrals for our organization. And so when things don't work and you need that, not intensive medical treatment, but intensive expertise legal care, folks come to see us and we listen.
Mitch, thank you so much for sharing information about this amazing community resource. Hi, everybody. Fran Paleo-Moyer, Badger Talks producer. Feel free to post your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Mitch. I do have a couple of questions for you though, Mitch. So we talk about the community using these services. Who is the community? So I know that we are in Madison. Does that include all of the people of Dane County? Can anyone in the state use the service? Sort of what is the geographic boundary of that?
Yeah, so obviously we are located on the south side, so it's very easy when our offices aren't under a COVID restriction for folks to walk in and come see us. But again, what COVID has brought us is that anyone can come see us. That has always been the case, is that anyone can come see us. And so we have typically served Dane and the surrounding counties. But this past year, we have served even further afield counties, because everything has been remote, either online or over the phone. Lots of our clients are unable to access video conferencing technology. So we've done a lot of things over the phone, which we'd all prefer to do in person, but yes, anywhere in the state.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Okay, and sorry if I missed this, but I didn't see roughly like how many cases per year are you accepting?
Yes, so that one any number that I give you is a little bit misleading. I will tell you that I can supervise 8 students, 8 wonderful students like Nia, who started off this talk this morning. And each of those students will have anywhere from 2 to 6 cases at any given time. We've had cases resolve in 48 hours when people settle quickly. We have one case that's been going on now for 7 years. So
Wow.
I got to tell you that the case that's been going on for 7 years should have settled quickly. So I can't predict. I cannot predict how reasonable folks on the other side will be. So I don't know how many. Roughly we average out. It's a pretty big swing from just over 100 to potentially over 300 cases a year. It just depends.
Wow, how lucky we are, the people of this state, to have these types of resources at our disposal. So in terms of this being a model at universities around the country, do we see this at other universities, or is this unique to our campus?
Yeah, clinical education, is both common and unique. Excuse me, is both. Well, yes, it's both common and unique, and so it's common in that the practice of law requires learning through a practice, and so people have always been learning the law by practicing it, just like medicine. However, as law schools became more and more part of traditional universities and the academy, if you will, they've gotten away from, there was a time when they trended very much away from providing practical legal training. And so that pendulum has swung back now towards an emphasis, not an emphasis, but more of an emphasis than there once was on practical training and education. So right now, in order to become a lawyer, it requires 90 credits of study. It's typically a 3-year degree where students are more than full-time in classes for 3 years. And the American Bar Association, which oversees all of the law schools, just recently, a few years ago, required that there be 6 of those 90 credits must be dedicated to practical education and training. So that's what I mean by there's a little bit of emphasis, but by and large, practical training is just a small piece of the legal education. Here at Wisconsin, we have a very proud history. I was a clinical law student. I attended Wisconsin Law School far too long ago, but I attended Wisconsin Law School and participated in many clinics before going out and starting community justice, and then coming back to provide training and education for generations of additional law students.
How cool that you've kind of come full circle there. That's really neat to have been on the student side and now on the professor side. Mercedes Verano just says hello to you. She says she is Patty from the hostel days. So she's just giving a shout out to you.
Great to hear from
you. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for joining us today. And, we got a pretty good gig here at Badger Talks Live. We get to talk to people from all over campus and learn about all these great resources, and yet again, another fantastic thing to learn about today. So thank you for all of your work for the people of our community.
Thank you.
Join us next Tuesday, May 4th at noon, everybody. We're going to be talking to Justin Huffman, director of Upham Woods, which is in the Wisconsin Dells. If you're not familiar with it, it's UW's 317-acre outdoor learning lab, and it's open to everyone in the public. They're going to be celebrating their 80th anniversary, and Justin's going to be joining us to talk about what's happening there. Please visit badgertalks.wis.edu, where you can see our upcoming schedule of programming. You can sign up for our email list. Please consider a donation. Badger Talks Live is supported by a grant from the Alumni Association. You can also request to host a speaker for your own event at that website. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next week.